Hello, beautiful humans, whenever you're watching this. We are going to talk all things climate education um, with the co founder of Subject to Climate, Margaret, and our education system and why she wanted to help found Subject to Climate um, and what they do. You, if you want to listen to uh, climate education for Illinois episode, that will also give you a little bit of insight. But do that after this, or come back and listen to this one because they're both great episodes. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the show. Hey, Margaret, thanks for coming on the podcast. Do you just want to give a brief introduction and how you got into climate education? I know you were are a former teacher.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Manila, for having me on here. My name is Margaret Wangania, and I am the executive director and co-founder of Subject to Climate. And this nonprofit is all about helping educators integrate climate into what they already teach. And you are right, that my background is in teaching. So I was actually a high school social studies teacher for several years. A lot of people thought that I would be a science teacher, but actually I started out teaching social studies, and that's where my interest in climate actually started, and where I started exploring climate education.
Did you like teach climate change in your social studies class and loop it in? Did they provide those resources if you did, or you had to make them yourself?
No, so actually, I'm sure if other people are teachers listening in on this, it's really hard to just have time to even think about integrating topics like climate sustainability unless it's already in your curriculum. So it didn't start out like this. I would say it comes from a personal interest. Like most people who do things in life, you are really powered by your passion. So that actually started early on in my life. I just didn't know it was climate. Like I have been always been outside. I run a lot, I bike a lot, I swim. So I've been very connected to the outdoors. I just didn't ever put two and two together that my connection to the outdoors was my connection to climate and sustainability. So, because I spent a lot of time outside, I remember in particular, I was drawn. So, I went to Princeton for undergrad, and they have a program called Outdoor Action. And they actually, for orientation, bring people camping for a week where you learn about things like leave no trace and sustainability. And that really changed my perspective where I saw, oh, my love of the outdoors is specifically connected to sustainability and conservation and climate. And I was learning about how we protect the world that we spend so much time outside. So it really stems from this passion and love of nature. So I knew that that was always part of my life, but I saw it as passion and a hobby rather than part of my professional career. So when I was a first year teacher, I didn't teach about climate because I was just so busy and I was
Yeah.
so tired. And it wasn't until like my third year where I started to realize that what I am interested and passionate about is actually what students are. And that's when I started integrating it by myself into our econ curriculum or our business management curriculum. So that's it really came from merging passion with professional life.
I feel like that goes in with a lot of passionate people. They try to loop it into their uh, like actual day to day what they do. So that's cool. Talk about like your organization you co-founded, Subject to Climate, and like how far, like when you founded it compared to when you started integrating it into your curriculum. Were you the one that came up with um this idea, or was it someone else that brought it to you and you were like, heck yeah?
I was a teacher, as you mentioned, and I started doing it into my integrating climate into my own curriculum and sustainability. And I decided to apply to graduate school to pursue this passion more. I was thinking about like, okay, I did it in my classroom, but what does it look like at the policy level. So I actually went to grad school at Harvard Graduate School of Education, thinking about education policy as the mechanism for doing that. But during my time at Harvard, I did a project where I created a curriculum that had was about climate, but through social studies perspective. While doing that, I was like, wait, but what teacher practically has 12 weeks of all this time to teach this? And so at that time, I met my co-founder who was at Harvard for the Advanced Leadership Initiative, which is a program for retired business people who want to pivot into social impact. And instead of like starting something together, like, oh, I have an idea, this is like a good practice for anybody starting an organization, we decided to, well, let's just ask the teachers, what are the main problems they're facing when they're trying to integrate climate? And then our idea really came from just spending time and talking to teachers and listening. Because if you're going to build a tool for them, you should probably listen to them. And so that's where the idea came from.
People that help teachers got to listen to the teachers that are going to use those resources, as well as youth got to listen to other youth. We just can't go off and do our own thing. We got to be coordinated and have um, one goal, one plan that's accessible to everyone. And that's what I love about these state hubs you've created. They're accessible to everyone, teachers, not teachers. I use them. Well, I just look at them and learn stuff. um, how many hubs do you have, and like, what's a hub?
Yeah, so maybe it'd be good for me to step back and explain what Subject to Climate does and
Yeah,
then
yeah. Sorry.
what a state hub is. And so as I mentioned, we talk to teachers, and the biggest barrier they face is that they don't teach about climate because it doesn't fit into what they already teach, and they're just so busy. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I was a teacher, that was definitely my experience. So the idea is like, well, how do we help really bring value and save them time and give them something that they're already going to teach? And an added bonus, it's on something that's relevant and something that students care about. So when we saw that, it wasn't that there aren't enough resources out there. It's that it's that explicit connection on how does it fit into what I already have to teach, and you have to do it quickly because teachers don't have the time. So what we did was Subject to Climate is an online and free platform where we've aggregated credible and engaging K through 12 teaching materials. Again, all grade levels, all subjects. We've tagged them so that you can just choose the subject, grade level, even teaching standards and other characteristics that you're looking for. And you can narrow it down from the 3,000 resources we have to maybe like the five that really work for what you need the very next day. And then in addition, as we started to develop the site more, we also started integrating teaching and resources that other teachers have created and whom we've worked with, because sometimes as a teacher, maybe you want to find that resource and you're using their resource database, but maybe you want to see what that other teacher is doing that's specific to your grade level and subjects. So there's a host of other resources, but I think the main takeaway is that we've aggregated things so that it's easily accessible to teachers. The state hubs are, as you know, different states have different teaching standards. So as states are, looking at environmental education initiatives, since we already have a platform where we've aggregated teaching resources, when we create a state hub, we create a state version of that database where we've aligned all the teaching resources to their teaching standards. That, for some states, we've trained cohorts of teachers in their states to create lesson plans, and we share those lesson plans that are specifically about that state. And the last thing is that we make a concerted effort to add resources about that state, about topics that the state cares about, and even professional development opportunities that are in that state, so that we truly become that one-stop shop for all things environmental education, climate education for that specific state. So that's what we do, and that's our state hub model. Um, we launched with New Jersey, so that's one. The following year, we created in Oregon, Wisconsin, and Maine. So that's four.
Oh, wow.
And the
Yeah.
following year, we did New York, Connecticut, and we created a special version for California, working with the UCs and CSUs. So that's a specific, a little bit different. So that's like seven. And then this year we're launching, as you know, we've launched Michigan, and we are launching Illinois. As that's how I met you, Manolo. That you've been involved with that, so that's going to make it, I think, nine hubs.
Yeah, nice. If you haven't already, people go listen to this interview, but also Helen and Marie, Climate Education for Illinois. They're working with Margaret and the Subject to Climate team as well. Um, yeah, that topic on where you touched on specific education and like learning about the wetlands if you live near wetlands that has an impact because and might touch kids' heartstrings because I know my seventh grade science teacher he had us raise trout and then we didn't ship it off somewhere. We we released it back in the pond downstate somewhere and that's what I think started my climate activism. So uh, local resources really do help, and I just appreciate you for uh, including that, coming up with that idea.
Yeah, and also like very hands-on because you specifically remember doing that specific hands-on activity.
Would you do it in every state?
I think that it would be great to do it in every state. I think resources are a huge constraint. I think not every state might view climate education the same way, 'cause that's what makes it hard. However, the way that we've done this is we're not trying to go like, you need to teach climate, and this is exactly what you should teach about climate. It's about, well, let's look at your state's teaching standards. How do these materials already support what you already have to teach? So, in a sense, I think it's helping the education priorities of every state, no matter what your opinions are about certain climate policies or climate in general. So, I think it helps with the broader education agenda. So, I think that I would want to do it in every state. But I think, just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. I think it's really
Yeah,
important in every state that we work in. Like, is there already, there are already so many local groups doing such great work. So we definitely try to see, like, does that exist so that we can help? We don't want to be the one stepping into a state that we don't have roots in and just take over that. We want to support the people who are already doing that work. So am interested in those various states. Like, are there people working on this, and how can we support? Which is how we got connected to CE4IL, right? It's not us going in and making an Illinois hub. It's in collaboration with a bunch of organizations that are already doing such amazing work.
yeah, yeah. For background, for anyone listening, we should have got to, or maybe we did. I forgot. Um, but climate education for Illinois passed a bill, and then I think afterwards you saw us and reached out, right?
Yeah, I believe somebody from
Or
New
yeah,
York connected Helen and Marie to me because we were already doing it for New York. And, because CE4IL was working on the legislation, this was a perfect opportunity to see how we could support.
yeah. Well, how like are you engaged with like governments at all, state, local, federal, to help you get it done, or you just doing this uh, solo and hoping that like ISB and the Department of Education in Connecticut will support it?
Yeah, I think the education system is highly decentralized in the US, and I think every state functions really differently for the Department of Education. So when we create a state hub, it's not like we don't work with the Department of Educations within that state. Really, we keep them informed and aware, and we hope that they become supportive because um, I think that's key in every single state. So, for example, when we first started working in New Jersey, the New Jersey DOE was very aware of what we were doing. They actually were part of this thought leadership committee that was part of a recommendation about having, a database of climate education resources. So we kept them in the loop. And I think it's also easier in some senses that state governments have so many competing priorities, and I think that they also have a lot of, local governments do have a lot of bureaucracies, and we are a nonprofit startup, so we want to be able to act quickly. So I think it's really important that we work alongside with state agencies, keep them informed, but we definitely don't expect state agencies to work on the actually create the state hubs. So that's kind of like what our methodology has always been.
Nice, yeah. How can people find you all and like get involved if they want to help um or maybe they're listening to this and they want to connect with you to create a state hub in that state that might not have one.
Yeah, we on our site, subjecttoclimate.org, there's a contact us section, and you can definitely inquire about it. We are, as every nonprofit is, we are, you know, working hard to do everything with limited resources. So we definitely are always looking for funding to support our work, but also always appreciate hearing from other folks about what's going on in your state, and so that we can keep an eye out when there's an opportunity to potentially create a state hub. I would say, though, right now, what we're really focusing on is not just like adding more states and having more state hubs. I think what's really important to think about is that we need to continue to make our core product really helpful for teachers. What I mean by that is like we have our resources, we have a website that has good UI, user interface, but things are changing rapidly right now. More and more schools are leveraging, AI for their tech tools, and we're actually seeing that our users are starting to search as if they're talking to like ChatGPT on our site and things like that. So I do think it's important for us to spend time looking at the external factors going on and going back to our core to really make sure we make our product as useful for teachers as possible. So right now, actually, our focus is really making sure we continue to support our core offerings so that all the state hubs that we have are going to be the most valuable for teachers.
Nice, yeah, definitely. Um, and do you have any final thoughts, or is there any ways for young people to get involved, or just people in general to get involved in your organization and stay in the loop?
Yeah, again, on our site, you can sign up for our newsletter to stay in the loop. And then I would say, like, don't stop talking about climate education for young folks and students. Definitely, Noel, you said you use our site to learn things about climate, educate yourselves as well. But then also, this is an intergenerational problem. It shouldn't be just on the students to solve it and figure it out. Ask your teachers to teach about climate, share the resource out so that they are aware that these resources exist to support them in trying to integrate climate into what they already teach. I think that, Manolo, you and the Youth Advisory Board in Illinois have done such an incredible job of, trying to spread awareness. And so I would, two things, educate yourself and then help bring these tools that will help further climate education one classroom at a time in your own classrooms. Share it with your teachers, share it with your administrators.
Yeah, and one question that just popped in my mind when you said that: do you have like a climate story, how you evolved and like learned about it and then went into action?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about it a little bit in like my running journey. Like I was very interested. I am very active. I've been a runner since I was like 8 or 8 years old. I don't know if it was a specific moment. but I was always outside and I cared about the environment in that sense. But it wasn't really until I did the outdoor action at Princeton where I really connected that, I'm outside a lot and I'm seeing all these environmental changes every day. If you're outside every single day, you start to notice different things. And it was that moment where I did the outdoor action trip when we learned about sustainability, about leaving no trace, about how even the trails that we step on makes a big difference. And, there were even small things like if you spilled food, you need to eat it off the ground because you can't leave a trace. And how we can protect and conserve our like natural environment for future generations. I think that was a really big turning point for me. And so what that made me do was sign up to be a trip leader. What that made me do was, when I became a teacher was to I actually started a cross country team or track team in our high school. And then, for some of our like week of action events, I would talk about food waste. I would talk about all these environmental topics. So it was from my own educational experience, which happened far too late. It was right the week before I was going to start undergrad, right? And so I
Oh
hope
yeah.
that people can have those experiences as early as when they are like, in kindergarten, because it really does shape what you do afterwards and how you contribute to this world that we live in. And if we can all do that and do our part in taking care of our planet, I think we would all be in a better place.
Yeah. Hands-on learning must have an impact if that's how we both got involved. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Um teachers, everyone who's listening to this, check out Subject to Climate, their website, and they have it's Subject to Climate on all your social medias, right?
Correct.
Cool. Yeah. And their site and everything, if there's anything we talked about that warrants a link or anything, will be in our show notes. So
Yeah,
thank you, Margaret,
awesome.
for coming on to
Yeah,
talk.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Manolo.
Thanks, Margaret, for coming on. Um, and if you like what you heard, feel free to give us a review. Or if you didn't, leave us a review. We got a lot of cool episodes coming out, so stay tuned. And if you want to get a sneak preview of the episodes, follow us on Instagram, Little Planet Podcast, or Little Planet Pod. Because the day before, I put up a questions box on stories with an explanation of the guest and what we might talk about. And if you have questions about that or really anything for me or the guests, I'll include it in the episode. Um, and yeah, thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you got something out of it. See you on the next one.